Welcome everyone to the show. I'm JJ Flizanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today we're going to talk about the Great Awakening, and it's a little scary because I tend to sort of stand in the middle and give examples of this thing and that thing for everybody so that I don't become polarizing and want to take certain sides about things, because I respect everyone's right to choose where you want to be and when. So know that this is a little bit nerve-wracking for me to put out this interview today, and it was a little bit nerve-wracking having the interview because I've been waiting to talk to Dr. Christian Northrup for 10 years, and I wanted to make sure I was coming from love and hope and not fear and anger. So today's show is going to be centered around what's going on, but also within the conversation of women's bodies, women's health, and the combination of using intuition as well as a physician's body of work, taking the two things, your own physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual intuition that no one else knows better than you, and taking a body of work from someone else, whether it be a physician or anybody, and being able to put them together and then make a decision from both of those places. And before we get into the disclaimer of today's show, I do want to remind you that I'm doing a Strengthening Intuition course in June. June 9th is when it begins. It's once a week on a Tuesday for 4 weeks. It's the only time it will be live. And why that might be important to some of you, it's so that you can get your questions answered, and I can do a little bit of live coaching with you if you come to the class live. Not only will you get that, you can also do the actual exercises with me. And again, if you have questions, we can address that. Once the course is over completely, it's going to be uploaded, and those of you listening to this at a later date can still purchase it. It just won't be live. It'll just be recorded. And it's not mandatory that you come live, of course. You can just sign up for the event and then come when you can. And of course, it is recorded and you can watch it and do it later. We're going to be doing things like EFT and creating new neural pathways in the brain, so that way you are open to receiving more intuitive hits, as well as understanding how to be more aware of when you're getting intuitive hits and how to act on them and how to determine if it's something to act upon. So from meditation and EFT to a deeper understanding of all the components that make up your ability to recognize your intuitive hits. We're going to be doing that in June. So go to jjflizanes.com/intuition. Again, that's jjflizanes.com/intuition. The link will be in the show notes. So today's show, I want to make this short because the show is nice and long and full of great information that I hope, if you don't agree with, you'll at least be patient and open to. Again, we're going to cross some lines here and get pretty real. And if you're not in alignment with every single thing said, I hope that you will remember the energy in which it's being presented. The energy of which it's being presented is to find a truth that resonates with you, and then to support that every person gets the right to choose their truth, period. Dr. Northrup and I had this conversation last week, and I put the video up of today's show. So if you want to watch the video, you can go to jjflizanes.tv. And when I put it up, it was because she offered to share it on her page. So thank you, Dr. Northrup. And I've already had some really great feedback, and a lot of people watch it and even email me asking me questions. So this is a disclaimer that I put up on social media. And if you want to share today's show, well, of course, it will be included. But if you go to my Facebook page or the YouTube, please share this disclaimer if you're going to share the video show. Looking for people who want to be part of the Army of the Radical Light. This video interview this week is for people who are looking for answers, open to possibility, intuitively know there's something else going on here, and are willing to come from love, not anger and fear. I am not trying to convince people of the opposite view to change position, only to educate and offer those who have questions an alternative possibility. If you hold a closed-minded, strong position in the opposite viewpoint, while I respect your right to an opinion, please do not waste time trying to convince me or anyone else watching or listening to this of your beliefs. You can make your own video. All negative comments on social media platforms will be removed. If you feel called to share this, please include this message when you do. Much love to all of you, and let's come together to protect our civil liberties while stepping into spreading love and light and moving away from fear and anger. Dr. Christian Northrup is the New York Times bestselling author of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, The Wisdom of Menopause, and Goddesses Never Age. as well as the host of 8 public television specials. A board-certified OBGYN with more than 30 years of clinical experience, Dr. Northrup has been featured on The Oprah Winfrey Show, The View, The Today Show, and Good Morning America, among many others. Okay, guys, today has to be one of those days for me. One of like the most exciting days. Like you've heard me geek out when we've had Anita Moorjani on or Dr. Eben Alexander on or Harville Hendrix 3 times. Like I totally geek out, but I have to tell you, Dr. Northrup, I've been after for 10 years. today is like, I am finally like, okay, we're going to talk and we're going to talk about lots of stuff. So without further ado, if you are just watching this on the video, there's a lot more of an intro on the audio podcast. There will be an intro below this, her bio and all of the information about her newest book, her revision of her 30 years ago book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, will be underneath this in the video. But please come over and check out the podcast as well. So Dr. Northrup, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to do the fastest thing. So what ends up happening is my audience, they love me, so they're okay with it as long as they're part of my audience. But, I'll get to this conversation with someone who I've been following for a while, who I have a lot in common with, and I'll spend a couple of minutes getting you to know me so that we can get to the level of let's talk up here, because I want to let you know that I know all this down here, so we don't have to start at the ground level. So I'm going to go very quickly through this.
Okay.
I found Abraham in 2002, been studying the law of attraction since then, have a very popular show called Spirit, Purpose, and Energy after I started this one, which of course manifested the right kinds of people for me and blew up very quickly. Didn't think I was a law of attraction teacher until I manifested my first event and people came from all over North America. And I said, guys, I'm not an expert in law of attraction. They went, yes, you are. And I was like, okay, I'll own that. I've been in the functional medicine scene since 2006, bioidentical hormones. I've done tarot, goddess cards, psychic stuff, clearing inherited emotional DNA. I had to write it all down. Quantum physics, love quantum physics, epigenetics, which those 2 words I have not heard talked about very much during what's going on right now. And I keep telling people, the numbers, like everyone wants to go number crunching. I'm like, none of it even matters, because we're not even talking about the things that actually matter, which is epigenetics, quantum physics, and law of attraction. But I digress for a second. Intuition, increasing intuition, EFT, EMDR, nonviolent communication. There has been no other physician that I have been more in alignment with on every single level than you. And there's no other physician. And I think I found you 10 years ago because I was starting in the functional medicine scene within a clinic. I was a personal trainer within the functional medicine center. And I know I saw something online and bioidentical hormones, I believe, paleo diet. And then when you said Abraham, all of a sudden you started posting quotes and law of attraction quotes. And I was like, whoa, my ears went, whoa, who's this? And since then I've started following you and I was like, oh yeah, there's nothing that, like, I almost feel like I'm you younger without the medical degree. And because I'm like, we've been in alignment. Like with everything comes out of your mouth. I'm like, yep. Like, I know that you talk about deep intuition. Everyone who's watching, we are not going to be able to cover everything I want to cover today. So I invite you right now to go over to Dr. Northrup's Facebook page. She's been doing the Great Awakening. Yes. Today is day 39. And I know you haven't recorded yet because I looked. Today is day 39. So please go back and watch all of them. She didn't do every day. There was a little break in there when you had somebody die, I think, and you were mourning and grieving. But watch all of them because this is information you want to know. And if you trust me, which you do, because otherwise you wouldn't be here, I trust her. So please soak up as much as you can from her. And of course, as we're going to talk about this book, if you don't have any of her books, you have to get this book. Yeah. So Dr. Northrup, I want to ask you a few questions very quickly. I know you're a Libra. So what is your moon?
My moon is in Pisces. I have Cancer rising, and my North Node is in Aries on the 10th house cusp. My moon is also in the midheaven, and I have Jupiter in the 7th house in Capricorn.
Mercury, Mars, and Venus.
Mercury is in the 4th house. It conjuncts my sun. Neptune is down there as well, conjuncting my sun. I've got 4 planets in the 4th house that are conjunct the sun. Neptune is down there as well. Venus is in the 5th house in Scorpio. And Mars and Pluto are right on top of each other at 15 degrees Leo in the 2nd house.
Okay, there's the Leo. Okay, Libra and Pisces, that fascinates me, but true node's in Aries, North node. Okay, Pisces, Sag rising, Sag moon, Sag north node, Mercury. Okay.
Okay.
Mercury's in Aquarius, Mars is in Aquarius, Venus is in Aries. So a lot of fire, a lot of Sag, a lot of truth seeking, a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
Like I've been good through this whole thing, law of attraction wise, when we talk about this pandemic, until the day it was like, you have to wear a mask. I was like, you all can do what you want to do, but you're not telling me what to do. And I love what you said. Like, I took this to the beach this morning. Okay. I took
Good.
I was like, I think I texted or I wrote to you on your Facebook page because I was like, wait, what is that form I need? What is that form? And so
That's right. And I think that were you trying to like give me a PDF of it? Like, I really want to get a copy of that. Mine is weird because it cuts off when I printed it out. But we all need that. First of all, because if you ever follow Rashid Buttar, he points out that what happens when you wear a mask is your CO2 increases. You're actually increasing your viral load. Putting on the mask itself increases cortisol and epinephrine. That lowers immunity. It is not a good idea. Now, if you have a cough or you're sneezing, it's a very good idea. Other than that, no.
Right. And so I'm like, the beaches opened up here today. And
they did?
So
oh,
they
thank
did.
God.
Right.
Okay.
They did. Only for exercising, which is fine because that's why we went.
Yeah.
But you know, I work from home. I'm a podcaster, I'm a podcast coach, I'm a health coach, a relationship coach. So I do all of the things like my business is great because I've been working from home and doing things like this. But, you know, going outside, I'm like, I haven't gone outside very much. I don't go to the store. I send my boyfriend to go to the store because he wears the mask. I literally had to wear the mask twice for like two minutes. It's the longest 2 minutes of my life because I'm so against it. Now, at the same time, I've worn a mask in places where people are smoking, or not worn a mask, but, you know, like taking your scarf or something, right? But every cell in my being is like, this is not right. And you can't tell me what to do. So, so thank you for this. And for those of you that wonder what this is, you want to tell them what this is?
Yes. The American for Disability Act was passed a while back, and it says that if you have a medical condition that prevents you from wearing a mask, nobody can ask you what that condition is. If they do, the first fine is $50,000. The second, I think, is $170,000 something. But this is a law. So if you have a medical condition in which you cannot wear a mask. So the medical condition could be, the mask is strangling my freedom of speech. You do not need to tell anyone what the condition is. Now, all of us could make the case that wearing that mask is a danger to our health because it is. Because it is, unless you are trying to protect someone from an active respiratory infection that you have. That is the whole purpose of the mask. So.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
I know I want to talk about your books. I didn't have Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, the first edition. It was out in 1994, I believe you said, the first edition.
Yes.
I was still living in New York. I was still in college. It was like a very long, so again, I wasn't at that place yet. In fact, I was an actress back then. My brain wasn't even on. I didn't become a personal trainer until 1996. Yeah. So I wasn't even in the field yet. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So now that I've seen you hold up the thickness of that book, would it be safe to say that Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, the first edition, and I know there's a lot more to it, but that you took that in Making Life Easy? Did you take, because I have Making Life Easy and Goddesses Never Age. Is it kind of is it really just like a compilation of your entire career?
No, it actually is not. What it is an owner's manual for the female body from preconception and pregnancy to menopause, basically. So it's sort of the owner's manual for birth, not to death, because to death we then went with Making Life Easy and Goddesses Never Age. Mm-hmm. So this one is kind of all the things that you would normally go to the doctor for. So there's a chapter on breast health. There's a chapter on the uterus, the ovaries, the cervix, the vagina, the vulva, all of that stuff, sexuality. So it's kind of a Bible of what you need to know, what I call everything that can go right with your body and how to make that your experience. And it also debunks all kinds of stuff that women have been brainwashed with, like Gardasil shots for HPV, any hysterectomy, chronic persistent uterus, It's just how to avoid a cesarean section, what happens in labor and birth, what supports a normal birth, breastfeeding, breast health. It's all of that stuff.
But it has, unlike, let's say, a normal Western doctor who would be giving the standard, belief systems and paradigm, right?
No, it is how to literally make the most of being in a female body. So there's nutritional plans, there's how you deal with difficult emotions. I call it, by the way, the post-Me Too version of the book, because when I wrote it, everyone thought my patients were crazy. They didn't listen to women. The number of women who'd been sexually abused or raped was astounding in a small town in Maine, middle-class women, mostly white. And, my colleague said, I only see normal women. You see all the nut cases. And so the book was inventing a language of women's health. Everything in women's health is actually disease screening. There's no health in women's health. It's just, okay, when are we going to have the breasts removed to prevent breast cancer? When are we going to get the uterus removed to prevent ovarian and uterine cancer? It's literally, women's health is, keep coming back. We haven't found it yet. We will. And then we'll remove it. So now we have, cool, better ways to do a hysterectomy. I don't care if you're doing a hysterectomy with a robot or with 2 hands. It's still a frickin' hysterectomy. And we still have 1 in 3 women getting those. Now, if you had an operation where 1 in 3 men lost their testicles and their prostate, do you think that they'd sign up for that? Not likely. Not likely. Because they have been entrained that their organs serve them and they love their organs. Women are trained that this is, one of my patients said, well, every woman in my family has had a hysterectomy by the age of 50. I guess I better sign up for mine. I mean, I can't believe really how brainwashed women are. So brainwashed that they will have their newborn get a hepatitis B shot. This is insane.
It is insane. I agree with you. And it's sad. And I love one of the things that you talk about, that you promote heavily, is about finding your own intuitive voice to really determine whether or not whatever course of action is being told to you. Like, I'm the person who, and whether it be old soul empath, and Sag and Pisces in me, when I was in college, after college, actually, I was living in New York City. And I think at some point, this was like in the late 90s, I think I'd heard some kind of report about the KKK or something. And I literally thought I was in another world. I'm like, what? Like, what? That still exists? I really had no idea, because I live in my own world of happiness, of high energy vibration. So I'm like, it didn't even, I couldn't believe it. And so now fast forward, when I first started the show in 2014, I had on Dr. Elizabeth Plord several times, and she goes to town with telling people, you do not need a hysterectomy under so many circumstances. And she was super emphatic about it. Fast forward to last year, 2019, and didn't think it could happen to me, had fibroids, and listened to my body the entire time, did everything, and continued to listen to my body until my body said, okay, it's time. Yeah. Went for something that, and surgery was never going to be really an option. My body said no at every turn. And when I looked at what was options, so uterine artery embolization. UAE. 2.5 years ago, doctors were like, no. If you have any desire to get pregnant, you shouldn't do this. And so that immediately got taken off the table. Well, I waited, and then I got a hit that said, check it now. So I went on and I checked it now. Now it's the fertility preserver. And I was like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I called the doctor who I worked with the first time, loved her. She wasn't doing them anymore, gave me a recommendation, went straight to the physician doing this, to the surgeon doing this. And I walked in and I got the MRI, the MRI. And I realized, they're going to want to put me through like their thing. So I quickly told the practitioner who took my blood pressure and stuff. I said, by the way, I don't need to look at the films, just yes or no, she'll do it or she won't do it.
You're right.
She comes in and she wants to explain. I'm like, no, I don't need to see it. Will you do it or won't you do it? And she said, I will, but it's not my first recommendation. And then she goes on to say, well, I'm a vegan and I'm woo. You're woo, I'm woo. But she's recommending a hysterectomy. And I looked her dead in the face and was like, yeah, that's not happening. Then she sent me to the gynecologist because I didn't have a gynecologist. Like I took responsibility for my health, decided what was best for me, went there, asked, will you do it? If she would have said no, I would have gone to somebody else.
Right.
But now I got to go back down the chain because now I'm a high risk patient. She thinks I'm a high risk patient. Then she goes to the gynecologist. I go to the gynecologist, and the gynecologist says to me, she's younger, she's cute. She says to me, you make me nervous. And I said, it's going to be okay.
Right.
Like, she's like, here's the problem. You have the size of a baby's head sticking in the middle of it that could fall. I said, and there's a chance it'll just deteriorate on its own and everything will be fine. And she went, that's right. Yeah, that's a chance. I said, well, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Right. So it was a test that I was ready for. My intuition led the entire thing, even when the doctors wanted to take, I was fighting with her in the emergency room going in for the procedure. She wanted to keep me overnight. Anyway, but the point is, but I'm not a doctor. And this is what I have struggled with at times of getting to the place of, so you sit in a position where I understand there's also risks. And I want to talk about the risks that you took in your practice when you wrote the first version of Women's Body is Women's Wisdom. I want to know what came out of that. I mean, you're still on the leading edge, but I feel like because you have a doctorate, you have more authority and people will listen. I don't, because I followed my intuition, and it's only been in the last, since I started my show, that I'm willing. And I'm very scientific. I'm 50% left and right brain, but there's such a strong intuitive hit about so many things that I don't need the science for. I have been talking about Dr. Bruce Lipton's book, which, by the way, he's coming on in July, so I'm going to have to read it, which I'm ready for. But I've been like, biology belief. Yep, totally. Yes. What do I need to know more about that? I don't need to know more about that.
No.
Right. So can we talk about why your experience in becoming a doctor, and then your intuitive hits to shake up the system and write this book and ask the questions?
It all came from my childhood. So let's be clear. I was radicalized before I started.
Okay.
I had a sister who died in a pool of her own vomit when she was 6 months old. The doctors didn't know what was going on. My mother couldn't hold her. So I experienced what that was like. I had another brother born. He wouldn't eat. Nobody knew why. The nurses said to my parents, I'd get him out of here if I were you. They don't know what's going on. He'll die if he's in here. So my parents tube fed him every hour on the hour. My dad was a dentist. So he'd put down an NG tube and they would feed him formula because he would not eat. And nobody knew why. At a year, he was 10 pounds. My mother was told he was mentally defective, that he wouldn't live. They finally found a doctor who would put down a fiber optic scope, a woman, and that was a real pioneering procedure then. And she saw that his esophagus was so eroded from the NG tube. She said, take the tube out, let's just see what happens. And in 2 days, he started to eat. At a year old, I had never seen him without adhesive tape on his face, holding in the tube. And today, he's got a little bit of immune compromise, like a few autoimmune things, but he's a very healthy 50-something, and, sort of no thanks to the medical profession. And when I first did my interview at the University of Buffalo, the attending physician of my brother was the guy who interviewed me, and he was sure that my brother would be dead. Then when I was interviewing at Yale Medical School, my dad ended up in the cardiac intensive care unit with chest pain, and in 2 days, he called my mother. He said, come and get me. They don't know what's going on. And so my mother went in to get him. The nurses were furious. He walked out with the chest lead still hanging off him. And when I got home, he's sitting up in a chair, fluids 2/3 of the way up his lung fields. They did not know what was going on. He had an infectious pericarditis. He did not have a heart attack. It was misdiagnosed. And, chances are good they would have killed him had he stayed in the hospital. So I grew up wondering why doctors don't tell you the truth. Why don't they say when they don't know? And my aunt and uncle, my dad's brother and sister, were both medical doctors. So I wasn't, against the medical profession. They were family, but they always made fun of my dad. We were into organic food. We had a compost pile. We spiked the vitamin C in the orange juice. My mother made yogurt to take down to the street with people on antibiotics that my dad was treating. So I grew up with all of this stuff already. And then when I got to medical school, I loved what I was learning. I saw how useful it was if you're bleeding to death or you come in with multiple trauma. I married an orthopedic surgeon. And, so I saw what could happen with multiple traumas. That's all beautiful. But when I was in residency, My cousin calls me. She said, I have a fibroid tumor and I'm treating it with macrobiotic diet. And I thought, okay. So I met with Michio Kushi, the guy who brought macrobiotics to the United States and brought Erewhon Natural Foods to the United States. And Michio and I would sit, and I would sit with him during his consultations. People would come in with these enormous charts, having been given up for dead by the medical profession. I would watch what happened when they changed their diet. Not with all of them, of course, but some had an absolute turnaround. So I began in early days of my career to have people from the macrobiotic community of all over the world come to see me because I understood and honored what they were trying to do with their quality of their food, the quality of their blood. And then I started to give lectures with William Castelli of the Framingham Heart Project, and he'd show slides of the arteries of that diet could completely clear the arteries. And he would then say, and the only way to get the proper treatment in the United States is to be a monkey, because these were all in monkey studies. And, and at the time, the arrogance of the medical profession was not lost on me. These people come in, the medical profession says, go home, you're terminal, you're going to die, and get your affairs in order. So then they come in with the chart to Michio Kushi, and some of them were helped. And then the medical profession has the hubris to criticize them. This, to me, was unconscionable. And then the way doctors have treated chiropractors. Well, he's not a real doctor. Are there some bad chiropractors? Yeah, there's some bad MDs too. So the arrogance of the profession, the inability to think outside the box, to be criticized. I used to have to close the door of my office so that my colleagues wouldn't hear me talking to a breast cancer patient about nutrition. That was considered off the table. No, nutrition has nothing to do with it. It's insane. It's insane. So I knew, on the other hand, I loved my profession. I loved my colleagues. I loved the nurses. I saw how much good was done. But it's funny. I listened to Rashid Buttar today, a YouTube that he did, and he said, doctors are not the brightest people in the world. He said what they are very good at is following orders and working under very heavy workload conditions. Doctors have the heaviest workload of anybody, but they're very simple and they follow orders and they don't want to get out of line, but they are not the smartest people in the world. And I thought, yeah, and they follow orders and they really don't want to, increasingly now, worse than ever, is these frickin' protocols. So you go in for any visit and all they're doing is checking things off on an iPad. Zach Bush, one of my heroes, talks about how the intuitive, hands-on feeling approach to medicine is almost gone. And now what do we have? Telemedicine. You have to be with somebody. Yes, there's plenty you can do. You know that from a screen and us and all. There's a lot you can do, but nothing takes the place of touching somebody. And so I've just always seen the problems. On the other hand, I had enough courage to do what I would do because people like you came to see me. And if I had someone who trusted herself, then I was okay. But even with my practice, only 5% of the people that I saw would really trust themselves when the chips were down. An example, I had Carolyn Mace, the medical intuitive, on speed dial. She would do a $25 reading on any of my patients, and she'd tell me what was really going on. Do you know how many people could handle that information? 5%. Oh, yeah. 5%. Because, she once told me my very first reading with her, she goes, your heart rhythm has changed in the last 3 years. You are a rescue addict. Do you hear me? You are a rescue addict. And if you do not change that, then you're going to have a heart condition. Now, my whole family, both sides, died of heart disease. So that got my attention. The other thing she told me is if I hadn't left my practice when I did, the conventional practice, she said you had in your electromagnetic field, in your energy field, you had an ovarian tumor that was forming. So that was already in the ethers around
Mm-hmm.
your body. It never manifested because I left. So I knew, and I knew from watching my patients, that if they didn't get a handle on these emotional things or legacy things in their legacy, it would manifest as a physical illness. So I always knew that, like, get out before. Now, I too had a fibroid. I used to say the size of my husband's head. So,
I heard it was
know
soccer ball. I heard you say
yeah,
soccer ball
soccer
once.
ball, but big. And and finally just had it removed by an infertility surgeon who was just the most wonderful, wonderful man. He repaired women's pelvises. He didn't care how old you were. And I went to a woman who does numerology, astrology, and the Kabbalah. And when I told her about him, she goes, well, I wonder what he did to women's pelvises in the past. So,
to make up for it now.
We just know the hologram of it, the whole hologram. So, yes, I started to have lawsuits in my second year of my residency, and I had one or another lawsuit going for my entire practice. And I finally stopped seeing patients when I got 2 lawsuits in the same day. One for a nurse practitioner who I worked with for a patient I never saw. And I finally said, and my lawyer said, you're perceived as the top of the flagpole. So therefore, you can be sued by anyone about anything. And I had a lawsuit going when the first edition of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom came out, failure to diagnose ovarian cancer. And she had had a normal ultrasound. And so I'm about to go out on the road on a book tour in 1994 when you were met by an author guide, and you went around to all the radio stations. And my first place that I landed was Salt Lake City. My lawyer said, this entire book is admissible in court. And I said, the book is a prayer. It's not a scientific treatise. And the day I was to go and get on the plane, I got a call that the lawsuit had been dropped because because stage 3 ovarian cancer is incredibly difficult to diagnose early. We don't have the diagnostic capability. But what I also know, and is that somebody can manifest stage 3 whatever in a week if
Quickly.
the soul wants to get your attention. Mm-hmm. So I always had to practice according to my own soul, the dictates of my soul. In fact, I think I had someone tell me years ago, one of those psychic people you go to, who said, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, you have not said what you know. This time, you have to do it. So, that Pluto, Mars in the second house, 15 degrees Leo, it's like a rocket. It's a rocket compelling me to do these things, like the Great Awakening series that I have done. I'm just compelled to do it. I started on 4/4/2020, which is the 444 portal. And the next day was day 1, after we had 1 million people or more meditating all over the planet and changing the Schumann resonance of the earth. So, and of course, Bruce Lipton, who you're going to have on, suggests that we all at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. do a visualization and meditation of how we would like the world to look, because that's what's going to change this this apocalypse into where we're really going. Yeah.
And it's hopeful for people who are, I even had to listen to an Abraham this morning to pull me out of a trigger because it's, because the energy fields are so overwhelmed with the fear, right? It's never been higher.
Yeah.
And this is unprecedented in terms of being able to, like, I want to get on a plane. I've got a mastermind meeting we're doing in June. And of course the fear became, I'm not going to wear a mask. So how's that going to look for me? Is it going to be that I'm going to get into fights? Am I going to be not able to get on the plane? Like, I went down that rabbit hole because I'm a problem solver. So when the doctor said to me, the gynecologist said, well, here's what we're afraid of. And the reason why you're coming to me is so that we can do surgery in case this thing falls and it sits in your pelvis and it can't get out. So I'm racking my brain and I'm like, well, and I'm coming up with, I'm thinking great solutions because I'm a great problem solver as long as I have information to pull from. So I'm like, well, what if we gave me Pitocin? Like, would that help me pass it? No. Okay. What if we, blah, blah, blah. And I'm giving them all these different, like, what if we do this? And what if we do this? And I have enough information that I have a lot of different options, and they're all going, no. And I'm like, okay. So I said, I just know what's going to happen. You don't know, but I'm trying to like negotiate here with what possibly can happen. But I'm feeling confident in the amount of information that I have and in my ability to problem solve. So because this is new, I have found myself slipping back into the fear. I mean, I have to go out and appreciate every time we walk outside how many people don't have them on. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. You trust, you get it. And to hear you talk about how millions of people are on the same page, I'm like, okay, because I'm not around millions of people, so I don't have them telling me. My tribe is, and your tribe mostly is, right? I know we all get negative feedback at times when it goes against whatever they think they believe and what they want to fight for. Right. And when you talked about the other day, you'll know if you're the one who's supposed to get up and fight. And I battle with, I've never in my lifetime, especially since dealing with Abraham and law of attraction, have ever felt the need or the benefit in protesting. I'm like, I'm just going to be in my bubble. I'm going to vibrate higher than all of you, and none of this is going to affect me anyway. But I have to say that with the beaches closed not too long ago and people I'm like, my body went, oh, you're going to go. It's like, I didn't go, but if it comes up again, I'm like, no, I would go. And I'm like, wow.
Okay. But you know how, yes, you'll be shown and there'll be an impulse. So for instance, in your state of California, I saw that YouTube video of Cordy Williams, the megaphone Marine. So to me, that was an example of absolute true masculinity to protect and serve, that he would get up as a former Marine, take the megaphone and tell the riot geared cops to stand down. What, like you're really going to billy club a woman with a baby who is just standing up for her constitutional rights? And that video, because he was moved. You see, he was moved from inside to stand up. And Mario Martinez, who started the Biocognitive Institute, talks about the immune system has morals. And so when you see the innocence of another being threatened, when you stand up, it actually improves immunity. And so by Cordy doing that, he uplifted millions and empowered millions, because that's what really needs to happen now. When I step out like I do on social media and say something, it empowers others to do the same, and then to become a little more thick-skinned with the inevitable criticism if one questions the mainstream narrative. But again, I have my North Node in Aries, that's the warrior. So I have to do it. But if you are, I don't know if you ever follow Magenta Pixie out of London, but she says there are two types of people. They're the indigo people, and we have to dig down and find out things. And then there's the crystal healers, and the negativity is too much for them. They can't do it. They're better off planting flowers and just having a very positive electromagnetic field around their bodies. And we need to realize that each of us, as we raise our vibration, we help the entire collective. But you have to serve in the way that aligns, or, as Abraham says, the thought that feels better. And, for many people, a couple weeks ago in Maine, what felt better was to go up to Augusta and join a protest, mainly because the protest, what I've found, because I was very active in the vaccine mandate situation in Maine, is that I met wonderful people, and I met a sort of a whole family of people who were all standing for constitutional rights, health, and freedom. And so it created this wonderful family. I think that that's what we're all doing now. The light workers are reaching out to each other. We're finding each other. We are not consuming the mainstream media virus of fear, because the fear is far worse than any virus could possibly be.
10 years ago, I was working with a client, and I won't lie, she listened to too much news, and sometimes too much news. So I didn't always trust. And of course, she had a Virgo moon. So what I learned about Virgo moons over the years is how hard it is to change them, and how they don't change until they manifest an absolute pushed against the wall, rock between a hard place thing. they will not change until they literally manifest the worst possible scenario that forces them to change. And it took me years of working with a couple of Virgo moons to understand that. I, again, tried this. I had so many tools. I'm like, I'll try this way. I'll try this way. We'll do it this way. I mean, when you exhaust me and there is nothing left, I'm like, okay, this is something different. Oh, Virgo moon, Virgo moon, Virgo moon. Oh, here's the through line. All you Virgo moon people.
That's interesting because Sagittarius people are the most high energy people on the planet. I mean, nobody can outperform a Sag. I mean, to boldly go where no one's gone before, that's Sagittarius.
Right, which I have it in droves. That plus I love my Pisces soul energy, right? My Pisces, main energy, and then of course having a little bit of Aquarius in there is the future thinker, the futuristic, looking at I can see the trends coming before they happen. Right. But she had this. She was on somebody's newsletter, like back when, and I'm sure you still can get them, but they were like printed and they got mailed to her. She wasn't great on the computer, but she had a newsletter and she was saying things about statins, about how doctors were being fined if they didn't prescribe enough statins, and then she mentioned the chipping. And I don't know if Bill Gates was mentioned or not, but it was the chipping and vaccines. And at that point, the chipping, I guess maybe I just decided even if it's true, I don't want to know it. I'm going to decide that I'm not going to be there. So the fact that it's happening right now is like, I'm like, wow. Okay. And again, it's the constant decision how to focus on it, how to feel about it, and how to direct my energy. And I've never been more challenged, really, minus the doctors. And actually, with the whole thing with the hysterectomy, like when I went in for that and she looked at me and said hysterectomy, I almost laughed. And I thought to myself, this isn't really happening to me. I had Dr. Plord on the show in 2014. I know how overprescribed hysterectomies are. And she's trying to paint the picture. And she started saying, oh, hysterectomies are overprescribed, blah, 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 but this is the best choice for you. And again, you couldn't touch me. I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. But I had to go, wow, that really still happens. And so when I got to the end of the road with this situation, and one of my clients who doesn't do woo-woo said to me, I have a hard time believing some of this. I think I sent him a picture, a story out of Dawson Church's Mind to Matter about energy distance healing and changing someone's healing overnight or within a weekend with just energy being sent to them. He's like, I have a hard time believing it because you couldn't heal what happened to you. And I said in that moment, and I started to cry and then he cried, I said, I have come to realize that the reason why I had to go through this is because I otherwise would never end up in the hospital. I will elect I have to be bleeding and dysfunctional on every level to go to the hospital, number one. But number two, I believe that there's going to come a time where I'm going to have to stand up and educate women on not giving up their uteruses. I think I had to go through this so that I could see firsthand that even with the amount of information I have and who I am, not that I doubt it for a second, but the fact that it was still happening to me at this time, when I felt like I wanted to yell at everybody in a way and say, don't you know about epigenetics? Don't you know about neural pathways and creating neural pathways in order to experience what it is that you want to, and I just thought this is an irresponsibility to tell me that I need this when I don't need it. It was like a 5% chance that it would go wrong. I'm like, God, doctors are like lawyers. You look at the absolute worst case scenario, you blow it up, you scare the shit out of everybody. And That's right. I wouldn't have known otherwise if I hadn't gone through it. And so coming out the other side. And so, again, I just really appreciate finding you, however I found you. I'm sure it was on Facebook. And watching, I remember you did like a 5-part video series when you were selling Goddesses Never Age. Yes. And one of the things you talked about was the black sheep of the family. And it was the first time I had heard and went, I'm a black sheep. I mean, I knew that, but the way that you had put it made me feel good about that. I was like, yes, I'm a pioneer. I'm the black sheep. And that's nothing to be sad about, because it's those of us who are changing, who are educating people and leading with light, with divine love. And people can choose to follow or not. They're on their own journey. They're on their path. But it's being able to step out and show people what's possible when they didn't consider it before. Because before I was sort of anti-vaccine, you have to have information. You need to hear someone's bad story. You need to have education of someone saying something different so that you could consider and then check with your own intuition. Well, what do I think is right? And, oh, that sounds good, or that doesn't sound good. That doesn't quite fit. And so I appreciate this work that you've put out into the world. And for those that are listening, because I have a range of young millennials, and I've got people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who are clients that have been listening for 5 years. for, obviously for anyone in the later age group, let's talk to why they need to have this book, why they want to have this book, both end of the spectrum, the young ones who, when I was in my 20s and not in this field, I didn't even think about it. And then the ones on the end who might think, well, but I'm past all that.
Okay. Now epigenetics, we've talked about that, right? Okay. If you can go back in time, read through, let's say, the menstrual cycle chapter, and you read the stories, it will start to ping. It will start to bring up your own history. And then you get to upgrade it. And remember that everyone who heals herself heals 7 generations past and 7 generations in the future. So this is, remember, this is a Bible of women's health, not a Bible of women's diseases, and here's all the drugs and surgeries you need. This is the meaning of the ovaries, the meaning of the uterus, the meaning of the breast. It's the chakra system. It is what each area of the body represents. So for instance, right now on the planet, we are all in the midst of an upgrade of our first chakra. Our first chakra is our connection to the earth. It wires in our blood, our immune system, and our bones. So we are now needing to connect with the earth, and it influences our sense of safety and security. So for those of us like you and me, our safety and security comes from our connection with Source, but also our trust of the earth. But for the collective, because of the brainwashing of the medical profession, their sense of safety and security comes from, oh, well, they'll invent a vaccine and then I'll be safe. And once we're all vaccinated and chipped, then everyone will be safe. Once everybody's wearing a mask, everyone will be safe. These things are safety, external safety. So what we have to do instead is you acknowledge the agenda of the controllers, the service to self groups. And we could name them, but we don't need to. And then you must declare your sovereignty. We do not consent. I am a sovereign being. You do not have the right to do this to my body. That's the Constitution. It's also the, what was the thing after World War II, the Nuremberg trials, where they said, after they found that they had experimented on all those Jews, many of whom, by the way, came to the United States. So have a look at Operation Paperclip. That's all very well documented. So they've been carrying on their dirty deeds long after the war. So we declare our sovereignty. And then the third thing we do is we forgive the darkness. We forgive it, and we thank it for creating so much pressure that we are all going to morph into a new human species, an energy-based species. Alberto Villoldo, the shaman, calls it Homo luminous. So this is the 6th extinction that we're in here. So we are now becoming more intuitive. Think about it. We're all shut in. So we have more time. And when you shut down our ability to connect with each other, when we're not in our cars, when we're not rushing every which way, we are actually connecting more solidly, energetically with each other than ever before. So my inner circle community is bigger than it has ever been as a result of this. So that's what we have to do. So first chakra, remember, is your immunity. And if you're constantly scared to death and you're wearing a mask, you are setting yourself up for getting the flu, getting pneumonia, getting a common cold, getting a cancer, getting whatever. Second chakra, that's what my book is. It's second and fourth chakra. Second chakra is money, sex, and power. That is basically what it is. You've heard the term shake your money maker. Well, that's where the ovaries are female balls. That's our relationship with money, sex, and power, going after what we want. And then the heart, what we really need to do, and I was listening to David Icke's entire 3-hour thing with London Real, and he said, when we come from the heart, when we come from love, we become unstoppable, because the electromagnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times bigger than the electromagnetic field of the brain Or the third chakra is self-esteem and personal power, but it's also fear. So fear is the solar plexus, and the head, you read the bad news and you get scared to death. But when you come from the heart, when you alchemize it all into the heart, then, as David Icke said, I must be the most powerful man in the world. That one of my YouTube videos gets 9 million views, and they're so afraid of me that they take it down. Now, the censorship right now in the different platforms, if you can't see that, I mean, if you can't see that, if you actually believe that they are protecting you, oh my God. Censorship now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is the same as book burning. It's the same. Like, go read Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit, whatever it was. And by the way, the Fahrenheit number is the exact temperature at which a book will burn. That's what Fahrenheit, whatever means, comes from that.
I'm glad that organically everything I've wanted you to say has pretty much come out of your mouth. The things that, cause like, that I want you to validate so that I'm not, they're saying, okay, can we go over this? And the conspiracy, although you haven't said conspiracy theory yet. But right. It's the people that even if it's not true, then why would you need to take it down? You would be trusting in your knowingness that it's false. And again, the whole pretense of pulling something down because it's not accurate. I'm like, really? Like, have you watched YouTube before? Do you see how many things people are posting that because it threatens us understanding the truth. And it's unfortunate that so many people, I mean, I know Mickey Willis's work and I watched Plandemic, and I don't know if I saw it on your page or somebody else's. I'd already seen that snippet, but I mean, it was like trying to play catch and fire. Like,
wasn't it?
You take it down, you put it back up. Yeah, whack-a-mole. You put it up, you take it down, put it up, take it down. And I'm like, Jesus already. All right. But then at the same time, we could say that's really frustrating. I mean, Facebook flagged me for posting it and said, well, we've taken this down because it's, we have verification or something. I'm thinking, what? Like, that's when I got a little, like, I was out of the vortex. I was totally out of alignment when I got my hand slapped. I learned what I learned to do the right thing, to feel good about what I'm doing. And so when someone else, even though I know that they're corrupt and that they're doing it for their own reasons and they're afraid, in the moment it happens that I'm told I'm wrong or bad, sometimes, and I've healed a lot of this where it doesn't really happen anymore. But occasionally I'll find a new subject where I get triggered. I'm like, oh, got to heal that thing. Okay. But it happened and I felt badly. I thought it's going to make me look bad just for half a second. I knew where it was coming from, but yeah.
True. My daughter and I, when we were doing the vaccine mandate thing in Maine, when she was little, she'd say, why can't you be like the other mothers? And do you have to be that, and all of that. And she's like a real community extrovert. She loves to get everybody together and all of that. But she then learned about aluminum and what it does to the brain, and the fact that we have these chemtrails that are putting nanoparticles of aluminum in the atmosphere. And once she learned, and with 5G, that'll make our bodies into an antenna to be more easily controlled. And once she knew all this, she goes, okay, I finally have to do something, even though I'll probably be shunned at daycare. And so the two of us put out a YouTube video on 5 things everyone needed to know about health. And the next day, of course, there's a mother at daycare who wouldn't look at her, which, it's like then her nervous system goes crazy because it feels terrible to have people hating on you. But she just said, I cannot allow this to happen to my children. I will never let it happen to my children, but for me to not say anything because I'm afraid of looking bad, it is not morally okay. So she lost a bunch of followers because she's got a big social media platform, and then gained twice as many because people said to her, oh, I see that you actually stand for something. You have nothing to gain and everything to lose by even addressing this subject. And so she found that she has far more people. And that's what really has happened to me as well. Oh God, don't talk about that. Oh, this really bothers people. I've had people say to me, friends, has your account been hacked? Has your Facebook page been hacked? It's like, no, the noose is off my neck. I don't have to fit in anymore. So this current edition of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom is just fiercely the truth. Because
I saw you add in the emotional pieces to it.
Yeah, I'm not even, no, I'm not, come on. Why do so many women have thyroid problems? Because we're afraid to tell the truth. And we need a little more iodine and all of that. But still, I mean, come on. We have a noose around our neck. So when I have the courage to say what I know to be true, but lovingly, it gives other people the courage. And have I lost followers? Oh, yes. Women who said, I've followed you for years. Now you're into all these right-wing conspiracy theories. Okay, so everyone, as a reminder, the term conspiracy theory was put out by the CIA. The CIA made up that theory, by the way. The mainstream media, by the way, has made up another one because, again, if they work by splitting us from each other. So now we have the anti-maskers. Can you believe it? We had the anti-vaxxers, the anti-maxers, maskers, and now we've got, the conspiracy theories. And here's the thing. It's called, don't look over there. She's a conspiracy theorist. Oh my God. Well, what's happened is those people have left. I'm grateful. And then a whole new group comes in when you speak truth to power. And I can't not do it.
Well, you were about ready to, because my audience hasn't heard this yet, that it was created by the CIA to avoid us asking questions about
the Warren report for the assassination of JFK. Because that report doesn't hold water. And they didn't want you, and JFK was questioning the deep state, so they couldn't have that. So that's why he was assassinated.
I've heard you talk about on your Facebook page that there were doctors' offices raided by the FBI for giving injections of vitamin C.
That is correct. In Detroit, they did that. And one of my friends, Jonathan, I can't remember his last name, but this guy did a lot in the early days with bioidentical hormones and all of that. His office was raided at gunpoint for recommending supplements. And that happened in the 80s. There have also been, at least 20 holistic doctors committing suicide or being murdered. So this is no joke, folks. However, the deal is, and again, by the law of attraction, Andy Weil said to me, you can say anything as long as you're not angry. So I think that the key really is that we say these things, but we say them with humor and we say them with love. Because when people are afraid and they're asleep, they will do whatever they're told to do. I mean, right now, in my opinion, the mask is just to see how far you can get people to do these things. And the 6-foot social distancing. However, I had a friend over today and she has a lung issue. She has a lung problem. And she said, I was really hoping that when they open things up, people would social distance, because she really feels much safer if people social distance. So and then I listened to Candace Owen, who says, my freedom does not end at your fear. But on the other hand, there's this middle ground where I want to respect somebody's comfort zone as another human being. I want to respect that, and I want to be compassionate. And there are many people who really, really believe the narrative, and they really believe that doing all this stuff is keeping them safe. I have friends who've been in New York City apartments for weeks without really coming out. And of course, Cuomo has pointed out that 66% of all the new COVID people have been quarantined in their apartments for 2 months. So how did the virus get in there if that worked? See, here's the thing. None of this stuff works. And it doesn't pass the sniff test. It just doesn't. And people are starting to wake up, which is why you have to keep censoring the stuff. But I am no stranger to this. I mean, I was saying things about mammograms. They would find things that you would die with, but not die from. I was against circumcision, which I've done hundreds of as part of my job. And I've never been popular for going against the mainstream stuff. I came out against Gardasil on Oprah in 2006. I said, you're not going to like what I have to say, but I think this is a mistake. I had no idea how much of a mistake it was. I mean, girls are crippled, they're dying. And then the cervical cancer rate, because the Gardasil has fragments of HPV in it, we're seeing a whole group of young women who got the Gardasil who are now getting cervical cancer. And we've never shown that it decreases the risk of cervical cancer, ever. But we've never shown that a fetal monitor does anything except increase the C-section rate. So I've been on the front lines of questioning orthodoxy for my entire career. So this is nothing new that I'm doing. But, no, dear friends, I have not been hacked. I am just no longer having to toe the line to keep my job or to keep my hospital privileges or to keep my board certification or whatever. And at this point, no one can take away my MD and no one can take away my board certification. And I gave back my medical license in 2015. I just gave it back. It was time for renewing. And I thought, I do not want the Board of Registration in Medicine to have a noose around my neck anymore. I want to say what I have to say, because I can tell you, with what the activism I've done in Maine, I would have been reported many, many times over. All the doctors are terrified to say anything. And now in medicine, like a Yelp review, in medicine, your review and sometimes your pay is determined by the number of vaccines that you give. And this is insane.
So you do know I could keep you here all day if you'd let me, and probably into next week, because every one of these topics could be fleshed out a little bit more. I'm just trying to condense everything in. And of course, one of the main goals of today, besides introducing my audience to you, for those that don't know you, and I shared one of your Great Awakening videos with my group yesterday. And I said,
I love it.
And then they started sharing it. So I saw them sharing, I love her. And I'm like, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, guys, I know. Can I get a little credit? But I don't need it. But I said, watch this. And I made a joke and I said, I'm interviewing her. I go, we're going to talk about her book, but come on, I'm going to want to talk about so much more. I go, anybody have any questions? So, but then they just started sharing it with other people. And I had a client yesterday said, she took time out of her session. She's like, I want to talk to you about the doctor that you posted, Dr. Northrup. So tell me about her. I was like, okay, let's talk about this during your session. That's cool. I'm going to interview her tomorrow. So, the bottom line for today literally is to get people right now to buy women's bodies, women's wisdom. They can, they can see it on my Facebook page. You'll see it. Instagram, you'll see it, or just drnorthrup.com. But you can get it on Amazon, And it's ginormous, but it's the Bible. Ginormous. So if you're a woman and women, buy it for every woman, because every woman needs it, no matter what age you're at and what stage you're at, because you address all of it. Right. I was reading it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much. And it's so detailed on so many things. And I love it. And everybody needs it.
Saturn in Virgo in the third house. Okay.
Detail oriented. Get it right. Get it perfect.
Get it right.
Make sure you get the mind, body, soul, every aspect of every point of view, and linear, and to do . Yeah.
That's it. You got it. You got it.
No, it was great. I want to end with us just addressing, I want to get your advice on what you've been doing. And I heard some of the things on some of your videos. So when this whole thing started, it was around my birthday, and I had a trip planned for my birthday to go to Italy. And we had, my boyfriend and I had a meeting with Moleskine in Milan that they had then called and canceled. Basically, they had sent an email and said, with what's going on, Italy's going to shut down and we're going to cancel this meeting. And we would advise that you don't come. And so we looked at each other and he looked at me, he's like, okay. And I was like, okay. I mean, okay, meaning like we're still going. And then of course my mother and his mother, well, are you going to still go? Yeah, I'm still going. Yeah, I'm still going. And so we had you talk about law of attraction, things unfolding. Like literally we felt like Jesus, the Red Sea had parted and we walked on water. Everything unfolded beautifully, perfectly, never in a half of a second. Now I'm pretty paleo. I'm gluten-free. I'm mostly dairy-free. But of course I was in Italy and that was not going to hold up. So I thought, all right, all of a sudden I'm going to be taking in a lot more inflammation. So what did I do? This is before all the stores got raided. I went to the grocery store. I bought extra liposomal vitamin C. I got my colloidal silver. I got my algae. I got extra vitamin D. I got other probiotics and digestive enzymes. Like I just loaded up on every possible thing I could to keep my immunity. I mean, we were in the airport spraying colloidal silver literally every couple of hours. Yeah. And, and I did what I needed needed to just at least try to balance out what I was already doing. And again, it was one of those moments, like, again, where I'm thinking, what is going on with you people? Like, you get, because I'm healthier than most. You want to be me. I'm so healthy on every, like, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. So when I came home and I'm thinking, why are you all so freaking out? Like, first of all, how you respond in your body is so many different levels. And you're not going to, if you get sick, that's not my fault that your immune system sucks. It's not my fault you're full of fear. So again, it didn't sink in until it got worse and the fear grew that this is really happening. And
yes.
Oh my gosh, this is a unprecedented, uncharted territory. And am I living in a twilight zone? I want to tell one more short story because I want to hear your advice to me on this. When the election happened, the last election, I sat in my law of attraction space of course, we're more of course, what I want to have happen is going to happen. Of course, people are not going to do the other thing. They're going to have right. And then when it happened, I thought my energy sunk so low. And I thought, oh my God, is this really, it was a confirmation of the state of lack of consciousness, the lack of awareness. So in that moment, I had to recover for a while. And I'm finding that my trigger right now is thinking that, well, that didn't work out. So I want to hear from you how you're making sense of seeing the Great Awakening and that it actually materializes and actualizes.
Well, you want me to get political here?
You don't have to get, you can, or you can.
Let me just say that I believe that what has happened I could make a case that everything that's happening now was pre-planned because of the election. Was pre-planned in order to have a different outcome for the next election. I have come to see that everything the mainstream media has told us is going on is the opposite. And that the results of the election, the last election, were exactly what needed to happen for the planet and for the United States to recover. And I never, ever would have thought that. But my colleague Kelly Brogan wrote the most wonderful blog after the last election about what this really was. And she brought in the story of the wolves being reintroduced to Yellowstone. And when the wolves, these ace predators, alpha predators, were reintroduced to Yellowstone, it changed the course of the rivers. It changed the species. It began to change the entire ecosystem of Yellowstone Park from bringing in these ace predators. Things are not what you think. They're not what you think. And I'm way more excited about it than I ever could have thought. So
you see the Great Awakening really happening and moving us into the next evolution of consciousness.
Absolutely. And it's not happening the way we think. So what I'm finding is the groups, that were called the basket of deplorables, these groups that have been alienated the way we've been separated, where I am now with all of that is there is such an awakening. So I don't care if you are a right-wing Christian. I don't care if you are a radical left. What I care about is informed consent and health. And I care deeply about what gets injected into our bodies. And that is that's my thing. I work with MAM, Millions Against Medical Mandates.org. Everyone should join Millions Against Medical Mandates.org, MAMM.org. We now have, I call ourselves the Army of the Radical Light. And so this is what we have to do. Everyone rising about this plan to inject everybody with nanoparticles that change your RNA and change the human species, because that's the deep, dark plan to make us part of artificial intelligence and to control the population. First of all, depopulate to about 500 million. I don't know what BG has in mind, but it's to kill 14 out of every 15 people. So this is not going to work for me. So I'm just starting with, we rise up about our physical rights. And if you want a vaccine, go right ahead, no problem. But I don't want my grandchildren getting 69 shots by the age of 18, which has just been mandated in Maine, New York, and California to go to school, to go to university. We are decimating public education as we know it, because right now we passed a law in Maine and New York State, which mandated Gardasil, by the way, that's killing young women. California, you cannot go to school or university without being up to date on all these vaccines. And we have a kid in our group. He has one more year in college. He's deathly allergic to 2 ingredients in the MMR vaccine. Do you know what his college told him? They said, well, have the shot in the emergency room so that if you go into anaphylaxis, you can be resuscitated. Now that's insanity.
How do we get around this?
You join MAMM.org and you say, okay, I see the dark plan. I see it. I see what you're trying to do. And I watched it in my state of Maine because I went, I put myself out there. I went and I testified before the legislature. It was like one flew over the cuckoo's nest because they'd already made the decision. So then we just declare, all of us, we do not consent. Listen, if millions of us say we do not consent, what are they going to do? Put us all in jail? Like, no, we're not doing it. We might need a separate country. I don't know. I'm looking at the states that don't have this. South Dakota doesn't have enough trees and it doesn't have an ocean. Wyoming doesn't have an ocean. I'm just looking at play, if it comes to that, or just buying an RV and going from place to place, it won't come to that. It won't. We have right now, Saturn just went retrograde, as you know. This is the Pluto return of the United States. So we redo the Bill of Rights and the Constitution to include women, Black people, transgendered people, all of everybody, because the darkness has worked for centuries by splitting us. Jews against Christians, Jews against Muslims, against whatever. I listened to a podcast today. The guy introduced himself. He said, I am a Jewish Christian Buddhist. That's what we have to do. We have to look at what brings us together. What brings us together? Black, white, who cares? Blue, red. The main thing is, do you want informed consent and bodily autonomy? And that to me is the issue. The rest of it, I don't care about.
Right, I don't either.
Like what I've said, and I wrote letters to the editor, none of them ever got published because the mainstream media is owned by darkness. And I said, if you lose the ability to consent to what goes into you or your child's body, everything else doesn't matter. Everything else is lost. Game over. Game over. So that's my issue. And as a physician who's followed this for years, who knows all the vaccine ingredients, like, glyphosate and formaldehyde and polysorbate 80, that gets all that stuff past the blood-brain barrier, fetal cells. I mean, it's insane. Little kids are getting 6 vaccines at the same time. It has never been proven safe, not ever. So the very fact, this is the one thing, women's wisdom, right? Women's wisdom is the mother bear instinct, like you have, that says, no, I'm not going to give over this perfect little baby whose eyes, kidneys, ears were made inside my body, and then give that kid over to a doctor to inject all of these toxic substances before the child's immunity is even come on board, because a child's full immunity does not come on board until 8, sometimes 12 years old. And we are injecting 99% of newborns with a Hep B vaccine, which contains 15 times the FDA approved level of aluminum, which is a neurotoxin. What are we doing? And who is so out of touch that they would do this? I mean, what I'm about is reawakening the mother bear, where the woman says, you got to come through my body to get to my kid. It's not going to happen. So That's what I'm about.
I'm with you. And I'm like, can I put you on speed dial? I want, because I'm like, where can I hide? How can I get around this? Again, it's coming up against, I don't know what the answers are, how to get around. I know how to get around a lot of stuff in terms of not participating and kind of, again, vibrating outside of this whole entire thing. But when, again, my freedom of being able to choose for myself comes into question, and the three Sages in me say, no freaking way.
Yeah. So you're just what you're going to find is that there are millions of us. See, we no longer can do this with one lone wolf So I was on a call last night with the board of MAM. The brain trust that we have there. We have a guy who worked at Google, and he said, what we did at Google, the impossible things we did happened because everyone came together without any ego. And that's what we need to do. Come together with no ego whatsoever, and just all row in the same direction. And that movement is growing. It's just growing. There's another great group. It's called questioningcovid.com. Go to that website. There are 48 videos on that website questioning everything about this spamdemic, everything. So,
well,
yeah.
I watch your videos to keep me in alignment and to keep reminding me, because it also feels good to know that while I do keep checking in with my own intuition about how much to say and when,
It's
and
true.
because I have to say because, as Abraham will say, you can't change mass consciousness, especially if someone isn't in a frequency to receive what you're putting out.
That's right.
So
right.
It's trying to find the like-minded people who want the information, or the people on the edge who are kind of searching, but not trying to fight against the ones who are decided that it's all crazy. And I'm clear about that. So it's really like the timing of how much at what time. It's come up in my coaching calls that I do in my inner circle. Someone asked me, well, what do you do when someone else is not wearing a mask? And I was like, well, Linda, I'm not wearing a mask. And I was like, there's not.
When someone isn't wearing a mask, we discussed this last night. And Sherry Tenpenny, who's been a vaccine expert forever, she says, watch the man on the YouTube video. It's called The Shirtless Dancing Man. And it's a message about when someone, I haven't seen it yet, is the first one to join the other person. Like someone starts something, but it's the first person who joins them that begins the movement. So what she suggested is, you're in a store, someone else isn't wearing a mask. You go up to them and take off your mask. You smile at each other. And you say, thank you. That's how we do it. So that we don't allow the shaming, you see, and the crowd control of the shaming. Kevin James just put out a very funny little video of these two guys, and they're jogging and they're shaking hands. And the next thing you know, a group shows up with masks on and their cell phones, and they're reporting him. I mean, it's a cute little video, but it's like, is this where we've come? That people are snitching. I love all the cops who are saying, we're not going to come in and arrest someone for not wearing a mask. And so I like the cops standing up, and of course, Cordy Williams and the Freedom Angels. We've got all of that happening in California. He started 1776 Liberty Now, I think it is. So I've joined his group. So we're all in contact. Sayer G, Green Med Info. There's so many of us. MAM is good. We've got Del Bigtree, of course. We have RFK Jr. and the Children's Health Defense Fund, Rashid Buttar. There's wonderful people. And the HR 666, you can't even make this stuff up, where they want to do the tracking and tracing. I love reading on Facebook where the people say, I'm sorry, we're in East Texas. That's not happening. No one's coming to my house.
Appreciate you Texans. Appreciate you Texans. Like
I've never all that, right. All that we blue state people who are so liberal, we were just decrying these people forever. Oh, no. They're going to help us stand up for our constitutional rights to, health, happiness, and the pursuit of happiness, liberty. We cannot allow our constitutional rights to be eroded now. We cannot.
Mm-mm.
So,
And I'm on the team, and I want to help. I want to do what I can. I want you to think of me as someone who's really like the biggest cheerleader in the background saying yes to everything. And what can I do? And how much more can I help in the same way, right? Not in the fighting against, but through divine love, through vibrating high, through frequency, I love what you also said about death, which that's something we've talked about too. Obviously I talk a lot about Abraham, but the death, like that, I'm like, guys, this is where, Anita Majani was on, like, like death is not Dr. Eben Alexander. Come on, guys. Like, death is not to be feared. And so it's when that fear is not helping your immune system or any part of you, and you're fighting against that, like, that's not the real issue. So I am lucky that I've at least put out, shows where I've stood up into my power, said, here world, how do you want me to show up? And it was a very clear, oh, we want this from you. And it was law of attraction stuff on my show, Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. It gave me permission to have a voice sooner to a crowd who was wanting the information and taking it and living it. So everyone who's listening, I know you're not all listening on Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. You're listening on all the other different shows that I have. One thing is true, whether you're male or female, women's bodies, women's wisdom needs to be in the hands of all the women that you know as an option for their power, for their empowerment, for their mind, body, soul preservation, for their understanding from different levels of everything I talk about on all these shows with the mind, body, soul connection. Dr. Northrup's going to address that in that book. She does it beautifully, much better than I could. She's got the degree, she's got the chomps, she's got the background. And while I aspire to do the same in the future, this is what you have to get right now for everybody. I'm glad I started with Goddesses Never Age and then moved to making life easy. And now I'm here at Women, because now my appreciation level, I'm ready for it. And I think the world is ready for it. I think women, especially with children and who are not quite sure about the vaccination conversation yet, they're ready for it. So if you know someone else who is on the fence, or maybe they're kind of open, give them a book as a gift for some kind of event, whether it be Christmas or a birthday or graduation. But make sure that we protect and empower. It is time for feminine power to take over and to spread love, not to take over in a powerful, angry, mean, repressive kind of way, but in an inclusive, love-based, divine-guided, intuition-based collective, so we can actually make the change that we all know we want to see, and everyone will be better because of it, not just the women, but you guys too. So
that's right. Good.
I thank you so much for being on. Again, everyone check out Amazon. There'll be links in the show notes. There'll be links under the video about going to Amazon and getting the book directly. I know I heard you talk about that you didn't do an audiobook because you hired the British woman and then the COVID happened and then, right? So
waiting for it. I mean, we thought it was going to come out at the same time. I also have an online course that will be coming out very shortly. That is sort of the empowerment course for women, what you need to know about your body and empowering your body at this, for any time. So we've got an online course that's coming out as well very soon.
Well, yeah, I'd love to help promote it. If you want to come back on, we can go into it and dive into that, because again, every woman needs this. If no other time in history, if it's not time to speak out, you're talking about thyroid issues, right? It's time to speak out. If nothing else, just for your truth. You don't have to fight for other people, but just learn how to stick up for yourself and your truth. So thank you, Dr. Northrup, for being here. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. It was a pleasure.